Thank you. Thank you so much to everybody for being here, and thank you for that incredible introduction. I've never actually been introduced before, so that was exciting. Thank you to the Clinton School. There's an immense WashU connection here. I'm an alumnus of WashU, and there's a lot of students that have come through the Clinton School that also went to WashU, and they're going to figure prominently into the story. Thank you to Skip as well for playing a huge role in why I'm here. My name doesn't jump out among the professors, authors, and CEOs that often grace the stage. But I will circle back to Skip. But first I'm going to start with a little bit of context. So it's 8 a.m. on a Saturday in my first year of teaching. I go to a professional development session off campus at a Teach for America event, and I learn about a really interesting technique called no opt-out. Essentially that means you don't let your students fail. You make sure they're held accountable for the material that you're teaching. So as a new teacher, I am psyched. I'm excited to take this back into my classroom the following week, and that's what I do. And I fail. It doesn't work. So I head back the next day, unperturbed, try it again, and I fail again. Do it one more time. I'm gonna get it this time. I'm gonna execute no opt-out, and I fail again. I failed. My students missed out on an opportunity. The question I have is why? I think I lack the support to continue to try these new things in my classroom. I'm one of 1 million teachers that leaves the classroom every year, costing us $8 billion a year. The number one factor that teachers cite is a lack of support and a feeling of isolation. But as a teacher, I was fascinated by the idea of growth, of my own improvement, of my students' improvement. How do I get better? So I started doing some research. And this was pretty much the conversation I saw out there as far as education. Let's get the bad teachers out, let's pay the good teachers more, and let's have technology solve every problem in between. So this obviously as a teacher wasn't extraordinarily helpful for me. And it also didn't jive with what I saw going on the ground. Dedicated teachers were doing everything they could every day to serve their students. So that brings me to my work here today. I've seen several years of the ed tech world taking hold, and I think now is a time to take a critical look at how technology can support and empower people. So tonight I'd like to tell you about my experience in and out of the classroom working to leverage technology to support teachers. And ultimately I landed back where I started, with the idea that improving educational outcomes for kids is really about people and not technology. But the question is, how? So again, let's get back to how I got here on this stage. It goes back to the Clinton School and Skip. I was teaching in Clarendon, go Lions, just about 60 miles down I-40 in my first year. A few friends from the Clinton School and I organized a service project for my students. We had pretty modest goals. Clean the community park, talk to kids about college, and get them thinking about how to make an impact in their community. These are some pictures from our efforts in the first year. This was something that was completely designed and executed by students, and ultimately we helped to clean up the park. The following year, we continued the effort by way of an after-school club. Students this time took complete planning control, and they executed the entire year's worth of activities. We created what was called the Clarendon Service Leadership Club. And a Clinton School student, Stephen Bailey, actually helped execute this club and lead this club, and came every week to help students learn how to produce and make documentary film so that they could ultimately control the message. And I want to show you a little bit of their work, mostly because I think it deserves an audience. This is my former student, Legacia Bradley.
My name is Legacia Bradley. I currently attend school at Clarendon High School, and I'm a sophomore. I am currently living with my aunt and my 4 cousins. I've been staying in Clarendon pretty much all of my life. I like about Clarendon the most is the people, because it's like a town where everybody knows everybody. This is our Clarendon Service Leadership Club. In the Clarendon Service Leadership Club, I serve as the president of the planning and operation team. The mission of the Clarendon Service Leadership Club is to better and beautify our communities to the best of our ability. And we do that. We demonstrate that by reviving the park. We cleaned out the park because we noticed that no one was really coming to it, and we wanted to get people more involved with our community. So we decided to clean up the park and paint it and redecorate things. This got here actually during the time that we were redecorating the park, and it has a little bit of significance because there's the key to Clarendon's heart right there. But in order to get the key, you have to have respect. The day that we finished, like, redecorating the park, there was a lot of more visitors that we don't usually see out here. And we work on personal development by trying to reach out to others and speak up, use our voice. My name is Educator Bradley. I plan to attend Vanderbilt University and major in pediatric ophthalmology.
So this was our crew. This was the Clarendon Service Leadership Club. We obviously had to rep our name, so we made some T-shirts. Next came basically what I would say was our biggest project. My students came to me and they said, "Hey, we did well on that silly algebra test that you kept talking about last year. We deserve some type of reward." So we decided, okay, let's raise $40,000 and go to New York City. In 5 months, with the help of Skip and actually many people in this room, we did that. And these are some pictures. Is that a Chinese restaurant in New York? This is at the Today Show. Actually, one of our alums is here in the back. She's a little embarrassed right now. This is at Columbia University. So these were some of my favorite moments as a teacher. And they came because of effective collaboration. For some reason, I didn't feel like I had this type of collaborative opportunity in my classroom on a daily basis. I felt somewhat alone. And then I realized that that's actually the experience of a lot of teachers. So my teaching story has taken me from Clarendon to Washington, D.C. I wanted to get closer to home, but I also wanted to see what effective collaboration could look like. And still, I felt like something was missing. Despite having really effective teachers in my building, we were all doing our own thing in our own classroom and meeting for the occasional faculty meeting. Throughout this journey, I've learned that there's one phrase that is so taboo in teaching among teachers that it makes them cringe: professional development. And there's a reason. I went through it as a teacher, and as well-planned and well-intentioned as it is, it often takes us out of our classroom and isn't immediately relevant to our work. My goal is not to knock the training that I received through TFA or at Clarendon, but it is to push us to improve the training we receive, especially in rural areas where we need it most. So let's get back to the question of why. Why we leave. Why did I leave? I'll tell you from my perspective and that of hundreds of teachers I've interviewed over the past few years. It comes down to this. Teaching is really, really, really hard. Every single day. We need 3 things other than pay. We need support, we need non-evaluative practice, and we need inspiration. We need to be reminded every day why we do the work we do, why it's such an awesome job. So along with my 2 co-founders, we launched an organization this summer to see if we can start to approach those 2 bad words, professional development, in a new way. We started simple and tried to imagine what effective learning could look like for teachers, and then create that experience for a small group. We had one core assumption we wanted to test, that teachers learn best from each other. So here's what we did. We found 2 of the best teachers we knew and captured them on video. But not just teaching a lesson. We asked them to identify their keys to success starting off their year strong. What makes them so great? We wanted to essentially take the mystery out of great teaching. The corny metaphor I used to kind of sell this to teachers was, you are the Michael Jacksons of teaching. You deserve a stage. You deserve an audience for the work you do. So one of those teachers was Jeff Lee, and I'd like to show you one piece of video that captures how he thinks about setting up his classroom. And when I watch this, I like to put myself in the place of a teacher at a particular time in a particular place. And for this video, I think of myself as an early career teacher during the summer when probably other people are out, at the beach, and I'm busy planning for my upcoming year. I need some inspiration. So enter Jeff Lee.
Vegas. You might think that has nothing to do with teaching, but I will say it has everything to do with teaching, and specifically about the physical environment. If you've ever been to Vegas, which I'm sure many of you have, you'll notice that a casino is physically built. Everything about a casino is physically built to take money away from you. There are no windows, so you have no idea what time it is. There are no clocks for the same reason. The alcohol is flowing very freely. If you want to get something to eat, there is no way to do that except walking through the casino. So I thought, well, how do we Vegas up our classrooms? How do we say that 100% of the physical space of the classroom supports the mission that we have of every kid going to college, to and through, and being successful and happy in the world? That's what I strive for in the physical space of the room. And so the first thing a kid notices when he or she walks into the room is they're like, whoa, this place is different. Around the room are certain artifacts that continue to reinforce certain things. This idea of proving the doubters wrong. If there's anybody out there that doubts that kids who come from communities like ours can't achieve at the highest levels, our job is to prove them wrong. Talent ain't enough. If we're going to achieve that level of excellence, we need to work hard. All the character pieces we want the kids to come away with, there are no shortcuts. The 3 Ds, social intelligence, curiosity. And so anytime they're looking this way, they're reminded constantly of that. The other parts of the room is, you want to inject a little bit of fun, and I like to call this idea of violating their schema. This is the double shot, 2 baskets, infrared sensors, 30-second round. And so that idea of Vegas, I'm Vegasing up the room so that they feel like this is a place they want to be. Now think about the last time you went to like an incredible looking museum. There's no litter on the ground because people don't litter in places that are pristine and look beautiful. And so I try to keep my room that way so that they'll treat it like the sacred space that I hope they think it is. My name is Jeff Lee, and I'm entering my 12th year in education, and I teach to try to change the world.
So I thought that was pretty inspirational. Jeff is something of a teacher celebrity. People go to his professional development sessions in droves, but they only represent a small segment of the teaching population. And basically, we think everybody deserves to see this. New teachers, experienced teachers, to think differently about how they operate in their classroom. Then the important part is supporting them through implementation. It's unfair to inspire a teacher without giving them the tools to actually do that in their classroom. So support is what we tried to do next. We reached out to more excellent teachers that we knew. We asked them simply to be available to listen to problems that new teachers faced. We reached out to 200 teachers that had just finished their first year in the classroom. We asked them to just do a 10-minute video chat with a little bit of pre-work and describe a basic challenge that they were facing in their classroom. Now, this is the middle of the summer. Again, it's hot, people are at the beach. But 60% of teachers showed interest. Teachers everywhere from New York to California to South Dakota to here in Arkansas. So clearly we felt like we had struck a chord. And then we just matched them with a few teachers we thought could help. Here's what happened.
for it. Okay.
Well, it happened. Essentially what happened is teachers started learning from each other. So the results of our 10-minute sessions, which I'm sorry you can't see, but happy to show it to anyone at any time, was really exciting. Teachers were learning from each other. Our assumption that teachers would learn from each other was validated, both qualitatively and quantitatively. But then there's that return to reality. If it were that easy, teachers would just be learning from each other every day. Students would be excelling. We could all kick up our feet and say we've solved education in this country. But there are definitely challenges to this, and we identified 4. Logistics. Who's talking? What are they talking about? What are the incentives? How do you ensure quality control? These are all legitimate questions. The next question is context. Can a 10th grade English teacher in Arkansas really learn from a 3rd grade special ed teacher in New York City? The next big question is problem identification. Does a new teacher really know what their problem is? And if so, are they diagnosing it correctly? And then the last is what everybody wants to know, impact. How can you say that what you're doing is enhancing student learning? So my overarching response to this is very, very hard. No one has quite figured out adult learning at scale. But we think that we might be onto something in that teachers are coming back. So there's a few hunches that I have about each one of these. The first is logistics, and this is where I think technology can play an interesting role, both within and outside of a school. First, stakeholders must agree that teachers learn best from each other, and that's a big hump to overcome. We can create efficient ways for teachers to connect on topics that matter for them. That's what we're working on right now. I have a software engineer on my team who knows a lot about technology that I don't, and he doesn't sleep because he's trying to figure out how to get teachers matched correctly. For those technology people out there, think Twitter hashtags and Uber come together for problem solving. Then there's the question of engagement. Why would a teacher want to do this? And that kind of makes me laugh a little bit because teachers represent the largest audience of Twitter in the country. Teachers are hungry to collaborate. They just don't have the means to do it in an organized way on a large scale. There's an appetite for it. And then if that doesn't work, there's always ratings, rewards to and from schools, meaningful badges that people talk about in education so that teachers know who's good at what. That would be, I think, a step in the right direction. The next thing is context. So I taught in rural Arkansas, and I was inspired a ton by Jeff Lee. That's why I went to go film him. This story plays out for a ton of teachers who get lucky enough to meet a teacher somewhere else who can inspire them. That's ultimately what we want to do. The last thing, or the second to last thing, is problem identification. And that is a big problem, but we need to start somewhere. And our assumption is that if you start with the teacher, even if they don't correctly identify their problem, you're engaging them in their development. You're treating them like they are the drivers of what they're learning, rather than somebody prescribing something for them. Lastly, it's impact. And it's a fair question. Here's how we think about it. And it's corny. Teacher smiles. Teacher happiness. Are teachers happier as a result of this learning? When I was a teacher, much of the battle was coming to work every day, being prepared to do my best every single day for my students. And I needed somebody to talk to. Would we like to be able to say that our approach makes students smarter and better? Absolutely. Can we do that right now? Absolutely not. But I do know that research says that much of teacher retention is based on a positive relationship with a colleague or another adult in education. We're simply trying to expand opportunities for teachers to do that. So can technology solve every issue in education? No. Anyone who says otherwise is wrong. But I think we should be orienting ourselves towards thinking about technology not only as a software solution to our big data problems, but as a way to really organize people and connect them in meaningful ways. Ultimately, we want to help schools and organizations support teachers more effectively, saving them time and money in the process. The problem we are solving isn't amount of teacher support, it's about timing and relevance of it. And the last thing I want to do is just leave you with a quote from James Stigler, who's featured in the new book, Building a Better Teacher. He says, "We have this idea that if you discover something quantitatively in a research study, and then you tell everybody about it, that'll improve teaching. The truth is, with teaching, 10% of it is the technology, the idea, or the innovation. 90% of it is figuring out how to actually make it work to achieve our goals for our students. I think we just really want to make it work. I think if we provide space for support, non-evaluative practice, and inspiration, we might be onto something. Thank you.
So teachers really are the largest group on Twitter?
Yes.
Pretty impressive. Okay, questions for Jeremy. Any questions about this plan? Yes, Professor Ernst.
Jeremy, thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate very much the inspiration you've given us tonight. A couple things I'd like to just raise and ask you to riff on a little bit, if you might. One has to do with the language of collaboration and connection and the kinds of things that make sense. Except we have schools that were designed in Prussia in the 17th century, essentially. So the design of schools itself works against that. But there's also another issue. When you talk about the context in which most teachers work now are charged with sort of this cultural obsession of testing. Testing that's grounded, by the way, in incomplete, often, I would argue, anti-Semitic and racist ideology. But the other part of that has to do with who tells teachers what to do. So these power relationships that many of our colleagues, that I assume you experienced, are really troublesome. There is this rhetoric about teachers ought not be collectively organized, and we demonize unions when we forget why there were unions in the first place. So I guess a couple of things. One is, I wonder if you might talk about how you found the way the school was organized to sort of live out your vision. First question. And the second one is, how do we confront this disproportionate power relationship where teachers are getting hammered day in and day out from so many different sources, that the kind of encouragement that you seek is really going to be hard?
Those are great questions. So your first question was around the structure of a school. So I think one thing that we've benefited from is that we're kind of going at this from a guerrilla style, I'd say. We're approaching teachers. We're not yet approaching and really want to approach school leaders, because the school leaders that we've spoken with, I wouldn't say that they are receptive to the idea that this is even a problem, that there's something missing. So we want to be able to prove that we're first solving a problem before we look at designing a solution for a school or for a district. One thing we know is that teachers are coming back. Teachers are excited to be on the platform and be communicating with other teachers. That's about the extent of our knowledge, and I think going beyond that would be, I wouldn't know how to answer. Your second question. Sure. Yeah, teachers have a ton of layers of what I would say is both support and also accountability. And sometimes those two forces conflate, and they can affect both sides. So a lot of times an instructional coach whose job it may be to provide you with that support is also your employer, and also evaluates you based on your test scores and based on other factors that will play into that. So what ultimately we want to be able to do is provide non-evaluative support so that teachers don't have to necessarily rely on one voice. While that voice may be powerful and may be helpful, it's always helpful to hear what else is in the room, what else is being done in education. I think one of the things that we want to be able to do is show that there's a lot of really good research out there that should be in the classroom, implemented in the classroom, but teachers it's not reaching teachers. So we want to be able to provide that to them in a non-evaluative way.
Senator Elliott, or Director Rainey, good to see you, David.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And as a person who taught school for 30 years, I yearned, just as you're saying, to have that collaborative happening on in our school. And we had to, if we had anything left, at the end of the day on our own, we would collect. So And I'm a part of a study group that's looking at the internationally highest performing nations in the world. And one of the things that we find in common for all of them is that teachers in Shanghai, for instance, only have 45% of their day face time with students. The rest of that time is in the school site, on the school site, embedded professional development. And I'm just wondering if you had looked at other countries and thought about what they're doing, because what they do is some of them build teachers, and if you've done any work in that regard, I'd like to hear about it.
It's a great question. Most of our work has come in the way of reading very, I'd say, mainstream books about it. So The Smartest Kids in the World, Building a Better Teacher. They talk a lot about lesson study and having teachers really have an opportunity to sit around a table, watch a teacher teach a lesson, and then really break down and analyze what goes on in that lesson. And that seems to be a common thread across the countries that have shown a lot of growth as far as educational outcomes. So that would be great if we could implement that in every school. I don't have that type of say. Yeah.
David, you got a question right there?
Thank you. So, in essence, what I am understanding is you're suggesting that our approach with adult learners, teachers, should be the very same approach that works successfully with students.
Absolutely. Time, space, and pace. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Got a question back here, Mel?
Hi, my name is Melvin Clayton, and I'm a student here at the Clinton School. And my question to you is, I come from a line of educators. Both of my parents, my mom, she's taught school for over 20 years, and my dad, he taught long enough to pay off his student loans. And so, and I have a question because when my parents, they graduated from college in the 1980s from UAPB, and that's where I also went to college. And during that time, my parents, they talked about how their graduating class had, you know, in the education field, there were over 200 people back then graduating with those degrees. And when I graduated in December, I think that there were probably about less than 50 who graduated with a degree in education. And my mom, she talks about the profession, how when she first started teaching, she came right out of school at 22 teaching, and she felt a lot of support, and she felt like, I haven't spoken specifically, you know, about the practice and inspiration or whatever, but she did feel support, and she's felt that up until recently. And I just wanted to know where you feel that the profession, I guess, lost some of its nobility, and, you know, where that support ended.
It's a good question. I think there are probably people in this room who could answer it a lot more eloquently than I could. One thing I know is that there's been an explosion of graduate schools of education, and that's led to varying results as far as the quality of the education that teachers are receiving. Another thing is the larger trends in education. I'd say for the past decade after No Child Left Behind, a lot of the conversation was accountability. It was around test scores. It was around getting the bad teachers out. And there wasn't much talk about the professionalization of teachers and about making sure that teachers are in a place where everybody else in society views them as prestigious and views them as valued. And that's something that I think we need to inject back into the conversation as a whole.
Ms. Abrams has a question right over here. Wait for the microphone here, Annie.
Thank you. First place, I want to thank you for being the human capital that we need much, much more. One of the things that I'm focusing in on now is the identification of human capital. And I wanted to think in terms of how we identify. The Clinton School is a master in identifying human capital, bringing them here, and then placing them back out there for their implementation of making this a better world. One of the things that I want some research on is that I've been over at the public policy arena, the legislature, for years, and I have watched them go and come, but research-wise, I don't have an idea of what happened. Most of the legislators selected pages to come and have an experience, like you talked about the experiences of the students that you took to New York and D.C., an experience at the state capitol, the policy-making arena. I want to know what happened to those, and I'm fixing to do a survey of every legislator for the last 20 years. Who were the pages that you selected that was raw human capital? And I want to know what happened. Skip, I don't know how many of those pages ended up here and where they'll go on to be world leaders. Do you think that that human capital, a page at the state capitol, whether it's here or whether it's all the way to the Washington D.C. arena, will that help us to overcome the barrier of not being the leader in educational preparation in the future?
Well, I think the overall question of human capital is incredibly important. I think one thing that might be missed as far as the educational conversation is that we actually have some pretty incredible human capital already within schools and within education. And my argument is that that human capital needs to be leveraged even more, that we need to allow teachers and allow everyone in a school who has skills to share to be able to share those skills and leverage what they already know to help other teachers. I think that there are lots of organizations like Teach for America, the New Teacher Project, that are trying to get really qualified people into education and into the classroom. I think the next step is making sure those people who are there know that they're supported and know that they can actually lead from their position in education.
Vicki. She's bringing the microphone.
Thanks, Jeremy. This is so interesting, especially I think as it relates to me, the rural schools in Arkansas and the issues that we have with retention, good teachers, good leaders. You've been in Clarendon, and I'm assuming you were there for more than 1 year, right?
2 years.
Yeah. Just your perspective now, you've been to KIPP in DC, and you've done this work. Looking back at your time there, do you think this specifically would help the issue of professional development in rural Arkansas towns? And if not, do you have any other ideas?
I think it's another good question, and I don't think that I can confidently say yes. I think that anyone that tries to be the silver bullet solution is misguided. I think that this is something that I would have wanted. This is something that I know actually a few teachers in the crowd have participated in. Is it the end-all be-all solution? No, I think we need to have a really strong network of people in rural schools supporting each other, and that's going to come with that needs to come with time. That takes a long time, but for the teachers on the ground right now, I think that they, as far as I know, there are lots of opportunities for those teachers to be supporting each other that aren't being taken advantage of, and I would like to hopefully be a part of moving that conversation forward.
That's on our plan, Vicki. You and I will talk about that. Matt?
First, I want to say thank you so much for your presentation and your service in the South as a teacher. I have much respect for teachers. My mother was a teacher. She taught for 20 years in Mississippi, so teaching is very close to my heart. I'm a student here at the Clinton School of Public Service, and she's actually the reason why I'm here, my mother. I have a lot of questions, but I want to ask one. In the pictures you showed of your classroom and the way you talked about it, it sounds like you taught a lot of things that were not part of Common Core, such as community, respect, ownership, responsibility. And in fact, those things are tenets of democratic education. And I was wondering, how can we in this room, as teachers, as citizens, as public servants, how can we help teachers gain more freedom to teach things like you taught in your classroom?
Well, I think a lot of the things that you saw in the video and in pictures actually took place outside of my classroom, and that was really important for me, just to be able to interact with my students in another way outside of teaching math and teaching Spanish. And there's definitely efforts to inject character development and all of the things that you mentioned into classroom practice today. I think that what's most important is that teachers feel like they have the tools to be able to effectively provide that type of teaching to their students. it's very simple, I would say, as a new teacher to have very lofty goals about the types of values you want to pass along to your students. And sometimes that's not the answer. Sometimes you need to learn how to teach first. And you need to learn how to make sure that you have command of your subject and of the Common Core and of the classroom. And once you establish those things, I think that you can do lots of incredible things in a classroom. But first, it's the teacher on the ground that needs to be able to confidently feel like that whatever they want to teach, whether it's character or content, that they can do it. And that's what I think is most important.
Yes, right back here.
Hi, I'm Deion Jackson. I'm a professor of education at Hendrix College, and I just had a question for you about professional development, use of technology versus FaceTime. I run a program at Hendrix that places students in the Arkansas Delta to teach math and science, and we will have 3 young men there this fall. And so we're thinking about how to design our induction program in a way that supports our students while they're in the Delta, and we continue to have this back and forth about technology usage versus FaceTime. And so I would like to know your opinion about, since we're here in Central Arkansas, is it best to have that FaceTime with our students while they're in the Delta over the use of technology, or do you like the blended approach?
I think I'd want to know more about where your teachers are coming from, what type of background knowledge they have. But I think that what technology can do is actually facilitate that FaceTime. So I think that there are a lot of products out there that try to promise better results in the classroom, and my argument is that you can actually use technology to get teachers in front of each other more. And I would argue they're not two separate things that can happen. So I would try to find every possible way to make sure that teachers are interacting in very intentional ways about particular skills, whatever needs to be taught, whether it's content or use of technology or behavior management, but that the right people are talking at the right time. And I think that's what's most important. And the way to do that might be technology, it might be in person, but I think it needs to be much more intentionally done.
Got a question right here, right?
Jeremy, thank you for being here. We are very proud of you for coming back to visit us here in Arkansas after your experience in rural Arkansas in our Clarendon schools, and I'm so happy that you have used us a little bit of a laboratory for your advancement in techniques. Why don't you share your website with these good folks so that they'll be able to see something about your project? And I was very interested to poke around on it, and I think you'll find that the folks here will enjoy it as well. Would you share that with us and talk a little bit about it?
Sure. It's quite an opportunity to plug. So it's right now we're playing with a lot of different names, so that's why I haven't really talked about it. But it's called Pedagogy. If you think about the study of teaching is pedagogy. Anyway, so the website is my and then pedagogy.com, and you can see all of the work, a sampling of the work that we've done. But I do think that it's limited to some of the early work that we did this summer, and we're hoping to be able to expand and show that our hunches are not just hunches, that they're actually they bear out with a larger group of teachers.
Corey?
Thank you for coming. First of all, Ms. Abrams, I can tell you there's at least one page that made it to the Clinton School. You're looking at him. So there's a partial answer to your question. My question's about equity. We spent a lot of time, though maybe not enough time, talking about equity among students. But I'm wondering, in your work, what have you done particularly to reach out to educators that, I mean, for every one of them that wants inspiration and knows that they want inspiration, there are some that are probably close to leaving the field because they're so disengaged that they don't even know what they're missing. And how do you reach those? How do you take your show on the road?
We need a lot of help. I have no better answer for you. I think that we're starting with a group of teachers that are, if not excited, they're at a point in their development where they want to learn more. And and it's about just reaching more teachers and finding more channels to reach them. So as I said before, we're starting guerrilla style, just reaching out to teachers within our networks that we know. Ultimately, it's going to be about making larger inroads within schools and within districts so that more teachers have this type of opportunity if we can prove that it's effective on a larger scale.
Do you have a question back here? Did you have your hand up? Okay.
My question is kind of evolving as other people ask more questions, but I was just curious to hear a little bit more about just what the platform will look like. I know that what it's like now is probably different than what it's going to be like in the future, but just kind of like what would be the user experience? Like, what are some of the different things that are offered through your service?
Sure. Well, we're basically trying to learn quickly and try to create a prototype that we think is going to support teachers and support the expert side as well. Right now, we're focusing on the idea that if a teacher submits a problem, they should have somebody who is equipped to help them solve that problem within 5 minutes. So that's what we're focused on, is really quick, on-demand support. And there's a lot of challenges with making sure that that problem reaches the right person and that they're getting the quality feedback. But that's ultimately the goal, so that we can be able to say that a teacher is being heard, a teacher is being listened to when they have a problem, and they're being listened to in a quick and quality way. So I said before, think hashtags. Ultimately think that if a teacher in a particular place has a particular problem, let's say you're a third grade teacher in Washington, D.C., and you want to work on multiplication tables, you can describe your problem, apply certain tags to that problem, and then that problem reaches the people in the field who are equipped to help solve it.
Yes, Gary? Okay, I got you.
Wanted to ask you a little bit about the ideas that you've got in your head. How much of them came from Teach for America? How much came from the KIPP school? Both of those programs really focus on teacher support. I guess KIPP even more so. Are there things that you've recognized that were missing in those programs that have become the major content of what you're working at? And if they're missing in those programs, and those are programs that receive a lot of extra support to make them work as well as they do, are they applicable across all the different type of educational environments we have? And then just a second kind of question is whether or not, you said you're reaching out to the folks in your network right now, the teachers. Is it limited to the TFA and KIPP network at this point? Is that a representative group of teachers?
Let me first address that. So we've started with Teach for America teachers, and because that has been our network, but we've also started to form partnerships with teachers, non-TFA teachers, and organizations that support those teachers. So there's a few organizations in New York that we're working with as well. But no, it's not representative of the entire teaching population, not yet. As for KIPP and TFA, my former manager from TFA is here, so I don't want to. No, I had an amazing experience in the Delta and also in DC at KIPP. And I think that one thing I picked up at KIPP was that they have a training program where essentially a teacher learns from a mentor for an entire year and is gradually released into their classroom. And they learn not only what is the teacher doing, but how are they thinking about their classroom? What are the kind of things going on in their head to make them make the decisions they do? And I think that's an incredible model. I think it would be amazing if every school could provide that type of quality support. I just haven't seen it yet at a larger scale.
Hey.
Hi, Sierra.
It's really good to see you. I've missed you so much.
You too. This is my former student.
I go to Henderson. I'm a sophomore.
You all should talk to her.
And I've started my education classes, and I'm really excited. And I know somebody from my perspective could say whatever you're doing can be kind of scary, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have all these problems, which I know is true, but it could kind of, I guess I could see where it could scare them off, but I just want you to know it doesn't scare me off. Like, I'm really excited. But my question is, like, what are your ideas or thoughts about reaching out to students who haven't started teaching yet or in the process that I am now?
It's a great question. We'd like to form partnerships with graduate schools of education and with other schools and organizations that are trying to convince people to go into teaching, because I think one of the things that got me into teaching was being inspired by hearing stories of other teachers and the things that they were doing in their classroom. So we would love to be able to make this something that can reach you at your school and aspiring teachers across the country.
Let me just say, because I know we could go on and I want y'all to stay and visit with Jeremy, because we could have a lot of, obviously this is an interesting topic. Jeremy, you probably got more questions than secretaries of state that have been here speaking for us. But I would say that, we first learned about Jeremy's work when we were working in the city park in Clarendon. It wasn't in the classroom. But that's where the students were talking about him and the work that he was doing. And then when you started looking at his classroom work, he undersold himself. Not only did these kids have fun, but their test scores skyrocketed. And it doesn't mean that they have to be exclusive about teaching tests and all that. They were having fun, doing good with very high test scores. They all went to New York. Many of them had never been on a plane in their lives. And Jeremy got them and took them, and they had a great experience. If we, as a former school board member, if we can have a teacher with a problem find somebody else to help them with that in 5 minutes, we will go a long way of elevating this profession. And if you get that done, you may be Secretary of Education. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Jeremy Rogoff. Come over and visit with him and ask any other questions. Thank you all for coming.